and welcome to Enlightened World Network. Tonight, the show is Divine Relationship Recovery with Deb Goldberg. Deb, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Yes, hi everyone. It's so good to be here with you tonight. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and there is a call-in phone number too. So we want to make sure that we give people the call-in phone number. And I could do that after you talk about all the wonderful things we have coming on.
Absolutely. We do have a live audience with us today for our show. So if you hear some giggles or anything, that we are recording live, and we do have people listening live. So we're so glad that you are here. We're glad that you have chosen to take a minute of your time to just listen as Spirit talks. And Deb is going to bring some wonderful messages about divine relationship. Before she comes on and we get into our conversation today, I'd like to share some about Enlightened World Network. Enlightened World Network is a beautiful energy that is just really exploding. And it was founded by Dr. Ruth Anderson. And she has really pulled Deb and I into the fold. And the three of us have so many projects and so many things that we are listening to Spirit and bringing forward. One of those things that's happening is our meditation a day. These take place every day. And some of them are at different times, depending on the person doing the meditation. So if you like the page, Enlightened World Network, you'll be notified every time one of those meditations a day happen. On Sundays, every Sunday, the three of us come live and do a silent meditation. And that's just a beautiful energy that happens together as we send out love and send out healing. But we don't come on and talk. We just do the meditation and send the energy out without saying anything to you. Next Sunday, March 1st, is next Sunday, March 1st, I think, we are beginning a new show. And this will happen immediately after the silent meditation. And that show is called Come to the Table. Come to the Table will be an open discussion about topics of spirituality. And you'll be able to come to the table with us as we sit around and talk. And we'll be putting more information about that out throughout the week. Next month in March, our day of transformation will be March 22nd, and it will stream live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. It'll be streaming from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And we hope that you will enjoy some of the meditators, some of the healing energy that comes out of that day. And I'm so excited to be bringing all of this forth to you with beautiful Deb Goldberg and Ruth Anderson. And the three of us are very, very much listening to Spirit as we come forward every day. Every day, the energy gets bigger and the vision gets more enhanced and more enlarged. So go to our page, like Enlightened World Network, and you will be able to catch up on everything that we are bringing forward. So Deb, I am so excited to be here with you tonight. I'm excited about what Spirit's going to bring forth from you. Deb Goldberg is a wonderful spiritual teacher who really listens. She listens to that voice. We all have access to that gift of hearing Spirit talk. And Deb really utilizes that gift. And she hears the words. She brings that message forward. And with this show, this is only, I think it's the third show that's happening with this.
Yeah. The fourth, actually.
Each show, it's the fourth one. With each show, it gets stronger and the message gets stronger. So I'm excited. Deb, what are we talking about tonight? What's the topic?
Yes. The topic is how to fill your empty love tank.
Ooh.
Many of us have, I know I'm talking from myself too, of going through a good part of my life, feeling pretty empty and depleted, and not really understanding that actually it wasn't in my total awareness until I was awoken by Jesus. So we're going to talk about that tonight and how does your love tank get filled, and it's not by other people. Before we get started, I want to give you the call-in phone number because we are actually taking phone calls if there's questions. And the phone number is 1-646-876-9923. Again, 646-876-9923. Now, you need a web ID number to get through on that phone call, and that is 954-551-5694. And you can also put comments in the Facebook chat, and we will hopefully get back to you if we see your comment. Before I get started, I do like to do a intention setting and a little bit of getting connected to divine presence within us, because we talk about things that are expansive in nature, and I believe by setting an intention and getting connected, it's easier to hear things and to learn. So what I'm going to do is ask you to just take a moment to close your eyes. And let's take some deep breaths in through your nose slowly and deeply, and release your breath out from your mouth. And let's set the intention today for expansion of our heart space and our mind. And we want to allow divine love in. So let this presence within you come forward, whether you call it God, your higher self, the universe. It doesn't matter what you call divine presence, but allow it to hold you in great joy and love, and that you're willing to listen and open to some ideas that may not be in your awareness at the moment. So we want to expand our heart and our mind. So keep breathing in with more expansion of the feeling of love within you. This presence is within you. It is your life source, and it is walking through your life with you. You're not alone. You're one with it, and it is guiding you all the time. So take another really deep breath and try to open your heart space some more. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the present. So all the things that I have been taught have come through my own learning with God and Jesus and the angels. And so this has been my experience, and all of us have different experiences. There's no wrong or right. We're all unique. I mean, it's going to be very individual for each one of us. But the things that I've learned, and I was a mental health counselor for so long and dealt with so many clients that have very similar issues. Although until I was awoke, I didn't really understand some of the things that were going on inside of me, because I was so tied into the outside world and not paying attention to what was going on inside of me. And so one of the things that I learned is that I had an empty love tank. I was starving for love for 56 years. And I was always looking outside of myself for somebody else to fill that void. And it wasn't on a conscious level, it was more on an unconscious level. And the truth is, from what I've understood, is that nobody can fill your love tank. We already actually come with a love tank that is it's eternal, it's infinite, and because God dwells within us, because we are one. It is God moving through us as us. And so you have an endless supply of love. But the experience of being human and getting stuck in what I call an illusion of life, we learn to guard ourselves. And that's what I did. I must have been a steel wall around my heart because I was afraid to get hurt. And so I did that as a protection, but at the same time, when we do these things to protect ourselves, we also keep love out. It works both ways. And so we're really shutting down to understanding when love is staring you right in the face and you can't see it. And when my eyes kept getting open to what I was doing or how I was perceiving my life or my heart, who I was, it was really difficult because what I found that I did is throughout the years, I kept changing myself or shape shifting because I thought I had to be somebody else to be loved and liked. And we do this because we don't know how to love our own self. And a lot of times we don't like our own self. So I went through that as well. I had a lot of self-hatred. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this show is because I really feel strongly about helping people understand that you can unravel all of yourself and learn the truth of who you are by connecting to divine love, which I call God. So this is the way I started to learn about all of these things. I would sit in meditation and God and Jesus would talk to me about myself. And I would bring all my problems to them every day. I was running, it was like running home to mom or dad, is going home and saying, this happened today or that happened, and I don't understand this, and why am I feeling this way? And I realized that I had built this whole wall around myself that couldn't get penetrated. I wasn't able to see love standing in front of me. And so I thought growing up that I had love withheld from me. And that was my belief system from my family. And the truth, what I found out was I was withholding my own love. I was withholding love from myself. So everything's a mirror outside of us. And this mirror keeps showing you your internal dynamic of what you are doing. So I started to learn I have been shutting people out. I have been putting a wall up because I didn't trust anybody. I didn't know, I didn't trust having intimacy with anyone, of getting really close to somebody because I thought that they would hurt me. Terry, have you had a similar experience with having an empty love tank?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't grow up knowing love. I didn't grow up knowing what it felt like to have somebody just accept you as you are there was so much judgment and so much criticism. So every relationship that I was in, even not a romantic relationship, but every relationship, I felt that judgment. I felt that criticism, and it felt familiar. So there has been always that seeking of acceptance, that seeking of just being able to be myself without all of that imperfection that's pointed out in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until recently that I was able to relax into friendships that are very deep. And I've I have never in this lifetime had a romantic relationship that was not dysfunctional. They were all with that whole judgment, criticism flow going through them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel like I had an empty love tank pretty much my whole life until the last probably 6 years.
Mm. Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you for sharing that. Because I don't think our stories are uncommon. I think that lots of people have these stories. And when you don't have a good situation from your family life, and you don't have that intimacy and the trust to be vulnerable, to be yourself, knowing that you're perfect all the time, you get all this judgment of, no, you should act this way or that way, or I like you better when you're like this. And and I heard all of those things as a little kid, like a lot of us did. And so what I was talking about before, that helps us, that keeps us modulating all the time, changing our behavior, creating adaptations, a lot of codependent behavior, like, okay, well, I'm going to be so good, or I'm going to be so helpful to other people because I want them to like me. I want them to see that I'm a really good person. But when you get into those situations, usually you get depleted because you're going to people who their love tanks are empty too. And so you can't draw love from somebody else. None of us can. We have to feel our own love. And I've had lots of teachers other than God and Jesus for that. I had Dr. Barbara DeAngelis as a teacher. And all of this came together of understanding I didn't know how to be me. I didn't have the self-worth to believe that I was lovable. And there was parts of myself that I totally I didn't like. I hated parts of myself, things that I did in the past, judged myself through this, and I talked about it last week, an unconscious lens, which I call, ego consciousness. So all this judgment is getting filtered through all of that, and you're believing it. You're believing the experiences that you have define you, and you're believing that whatever you're hearing, negative thought, is you, and it's not. So until I really spent time with God and Jesus in meditation and learning who I was, and I think I've mentioned before that it took me probably 1.5 to 2 years to actually believe that I was lovable, that I was loved unconditionally, and that my heart is already full, but I wasn't feeling it. So
yeah. Isn't that a wonderful realization though, Deb?
Uh-huh.
When you do realize that we don't have to people please. Mm-hmm. We can just be who we are when we feel into that unconditional love. And mm-hmm. that's what God wants. He wants us to know that we don't have to do anything to receive his love.
You're so right. No, we don't have to do anything. It just is. God loves itself. It's unconditional love. It is you. It loves you. And so when you really start to understand that and feel it, and it was funny because I started remembering back when I first woke up and I was learning all of this stuff, and I thought, oh my goodness, I would spend time with God and Jesus, getting all filled up with love, and thinking, oh, this is just, oh my God, it's amazing, it's blissful, I just want to keep this all day long. And then I would go about my day and it would get depleted. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, why do I keep getting depleted? And our hearts are opening and closing all day long with every interaction, every thought. You have a thought, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, all right, I tense up again, and I'm closing my heart. I'm constricting, I'm opening up all day long until every day I was going back, getting refilled over and over and over again during the day, because I kept going back, going, I'm empty again. I'm empty. I don't know where it went, but I'm empty. And I didn't know how to stay in that space of my love that's already there. It is a well that is always full. So it doesn't mean I don't get tired now and then, or I get distracted, and I have my heart doesn't open and close now and then, but I always know that I am loved, and I feel that, and I just know that I have to breathe back into my heart so that I can get in sync with it again. But imagine all the things that we do in relationships to try to get people to like and love us, because we don't understand all of this stuff. We don't understand that love dwells within us, and we're sharing our love with other people rather than trying to get love from other people. And it doesn't work when we do it that way. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. That's why some people feel like they have energy vampires or something. Have you heard that term?
Oh yes, I've worked with that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Deb, what happens is we start to go into fear.
Mm-hmm.
We start to feel really good, and things might be flowing really well, and then all of a sudden those old tapes start playing, and we start revisiting where we were being criticized. So we sometimes project on that other person things that maybe are not even there. We're projecting that they're criticizing us or they're judging us. So we really self-sabotage a lot, don't we?
Oh, you're so right. All the time. We are self-sabotaging all the time. And we don't realize it. It's not in our awareness when it's happening. The more that you stay present, the more you actually catch yourself doing it. That you're projecting all of your fears onto your partner, onto your children, onto your friends, into the workplace. These are patterns. Whatever pattern, patterns are energetic. Everything's energy. We are energy. Our thoughts are energy. The stories are energy. So then we're going into every situation in our life, and we're repeating that pattern until it's healed. And that means that we stop believing it. Or maybe we have to do some forgiveness for ourselves or to other people. So when you're present, you can catch when you're projecting your story onto somebody else. And the victim consciousness, bully consciousness, it goes on in our own mind, and then we're projecting that outside of us. So that judgment is always there if you're listening to ego thought, and it's not real, but we all get sucked into it. Last week I think I talked a lot about myths and metaphors about what is all of this, what is this life. And I started to think about the movie The Wizard of Oz, and when they all laid down in the poppy field, right, they were going poppies, and they all fell asleep, right?
Right.
So that's like what it's like when you get sucked into the unconsciousness, the ego consciousness, or the earth consciousness of being in the illusion, like this veil comes over you. All of a sudden, it's like you're sleeping and having this dream of life, and all the stories keep circulating around, and you're going to keep projecting them. And there's a reason for it, and life becomes a mirror so you can see what you're doing, so that you can say, oh, why am I doing this? Why do I keep seeing this pattern over and over again? And how many times do you see in your relationships, even in your love relationships with a partner, you keep breaking up over the same things. You have the same fights over and over and over again, arguments. Why does the same thing keep happening? And it's because it's a belief system that you have about yourself that keeps replaying like a broken record over and over and over again. And until you have an intimate relationship with divine love, with yourself, with God, or whatever you call divine presence, you really don't understand all the different things that are going on inside of you, so that you can correct your thinking, because it all comes from a faulty belief system. There's nothing real about it. There's nothing right about it. And even if you've had difficult trauma experiences, that shapes how you feel about yourself and how you fit into the world. And you're making a decision about those things. You're creating beliefs about things that happened that really don't describe who you are or who other people are. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And the more you open up that self-awareness, you see other people for who they really are. So it's beneficial to do the inner work, even though it may be hard to do. It's one of the hardest things that we do in this life, in this human experience, is doing that inner work to really discover that spirit that's inside of us, and realizing that we're not just this body, we're not this shell, that we're here for a purpose. And once we realize that, then we go forward from there to really see what that relationship is all about. Every relationship. And like you said, Deb, once we can connect with that divine relationship, that's when things start to shift, isn't it?
It sure is, because what you get taught is how to see things through God's eyes. How do you see things from a higher perspective? How do you see things through infinite intelligence? That rather than looking through your small-mindedness, your ego thoughts, your ego consciousness, you get taught how to see things through God's eyes. You start to see yourself through God's eyes. You start to understand the oneness and the magnificence, the beauty, the magic of what it really is to be spirit. So, it's like we've all been coded with this. We're playing an acting role in this grand show called Earth, and we're just so buried down in this costume, this really, really heavy costume. Some of us, not everybody has the same type of costume, but there's so many of us that are just weighed down with all of the storyline and the faulty beliefs. So we really want to have a full tank. We want to have the awareness that full tank is always there, and it's always infinite, and it's yours. It's your tank to bring into every relationship. It is a gift given to you, just for being divine. Now, when you go into your relationships with a full love tank, then you're just sharing your love without the expectations and putting limitations on how much love you give, right? How much, like, should I give this one a little bit more? Oh, this one gets a lot more. I like this person better. It's just like learning to stay with that open, full heart and not measuring who you're giving what to. How is that something that you've gone through too in a learning?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, we get pulled on too, Deb. So we have to really be aware of where our energy is going out
Mm-hmm.
and set priorities, and it's not so much, okay, I'm not going to give that person as much attention. It's like sometimes some relationships do require more attention and more work, especially in a spousal situation.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to be aware, am I taking time away from that relationship to do things that maybe I should be putting more energy into developing this beautiful relationship that I have in front of me. And so there's a lot to look at with how we spend our time and our energy in our relationships. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of times we get hurt and then there goes the steel wall again. Then we're going to constrict our heart again. And one of the lessons that Jesus really worked on me with was let's not shut our heart down. Let's not close it. Even if it's a difficult situation, say I was having an argument with my husband or one of my children or somebody else, how do I stay present, not close my heart, and try to just understand, to have compassion for myself in the moment and the other person for whatever they're going through. And so it's really funny. We because I call these delusions. We have a delusion because we're sucked into the illusion of our story at the moment. And I thought I could bring up, an example with my husband and I. So this is something we used to get sucked into a lot, and then you start measuring how much love, or am I going to shut down? And I would always shut down because I didn't want to deal with it. I just wanted it to go away instead of working through what the problem is. So one of the things we used to get stuck in was he grew up and his mom cried a lot growing up. And so he really has an issue with tears, feeling like maybe tears, if I was crying, then I was manipulating him in some way. And so, but I would cry when I got upset. And then so I was crying, and then he would get triggered over his mother's story, right? And then I would be crying, and he would get upset that I was crying. And then I went right back to my childhood and heard my father saying, "Don't you cry. I'll give you something to cry about." So I wasn't supposed to cry back then, right? So here we are in the midst of having both of our stories clashing at the same time. And you don't realize that and these things aren't being said in an argument. They're not being said, "Oh, you're taking me back to my story with my mom," and I'm not saying, "Oh, you're taking me back to my story with my dad." You're arguing over some nonsense, right? And not realize that that's what got triggered. And this is going on all the time with all of us whenever we get into these patterns. And so you get upset, and then you shut down. I'm going to shut down. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to deal with this right now. I'm going to go find something else to do. I'm going to push down all of my feelings and forget about what happened, or I'm going to sit and I'm going to think about it over and over and over again and get myself so angry over it, and not speak what I'm thinking. So all of these are common ways that we deal with these problems. And so I feel like, because we don't understand that we're stuck in a delusion at the moment, in a storyline, and we are all doing this. And And actually collectively, we can get into this too, on if you want to expand it onto a much larger level, is that we all believe things that are not true as a collective, right? When we start feeding into fear, any kind of fear-based anything, we are now feeding into it the same way you would do as a couple or in just any relationship. This expands out to how we handle things on a collective level. And then nothing's really getting solved because we're all stuck in a delusion at the moment. I have a name for it, and it's funny because there's a name that they use in psychology, and it's called folia do, and the term in mental health, it's a syndrome, and it is not a psychosis, but I'll let me read you the direction from the dictionary. It's a mental disorder that two people share and experience at the same time. If you and your best friend are convinced that her dog can speak English, it may be a folia do. Folia do means shared madness, or madness for two in French. If three people share the delusion, it's a folia trois. So I look at this as a syndrome of really from soul print energy, ego consciousness, and it's playing out simultaneously with your partner. And you could see it as in your family. You can see it at work with all the people at work, and you could see it on a whole collective, expansive way of looking at it. Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so interesting, Deb, this whole conversation, because when we think about it, we don't always analyze when we're having those disputes, those things that come up, those struggles and challenges in any relationship. We don't think about the fact of being triggered, of going into that memory imprint that caused us to have that intense reaction, like you were talking about before. But individually, I know in my case, I've shut down, and I just feel like, I'm not being heard, so I'm just not even going to speak. And so I would do the not speaking for ever how long, until I couldn't stand not speaking anymore. But I think as a collective, don't we do that as well?
Yes.
If we don't understand what's happening with energy, if we don't understand how we're all being triggered and how we're all really feeling into this expansive energy, but we just know that we're not feeling right, there's something out of sorts, we do that same thing. We shut down. And it's a fear response because we don't understand it.
Right. It's like that freeze, flight, or fight response that we all have, right? So either we're gonna fight, we're gonna get into arguments, or we might get into physical arguments, or we're gonna freeze, or we're gonna shut down, right? Or we're gonna flee. It's like I'm not gonna deal with that. So we're doing that as a collective with all these different topics that come up that we deal with, earthly topics. Now, if you don't have this relationship with God, how do you understand any of this? Because what we're trying to do is make sense of things, but we're not making sense of it from a expansive mind, a mind of unconditional love, a mind of creation who made you and understands who you are and who everybody else is. So, we get stuck in this delusional state all the time. And so it's not mental illness. I call it ego consciousness.
Right.
I got to a point where, I could say my husband was having a bad day and he was angry or yelling or whatever. And by the way, he is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And he is a very awesome husband. And he's been a great teacher for me. But when he has a bad moment, and sometimes when he has a bad moment, he's yelling about everything. And so for me, it's easy to go, oh, is he mad at me? And I have to step back and say, okay, he's having a delusion right now. And do I want to engage in the delusion with him? Or can I just send him love and pray for his highest good, that knowing that God is in him, working with him the same way God works with me. And in every single relationship, you are not alone in the relationship. God is both of you, in between you. God is surrounding this whole relationship. You're with somebody for specific purposes. They're holy unions that were picked specifically for you to learn. So when we are constantly looking for somebody to fill our love tank, imagine the amount of delusion that's going on, because you are coming from a place of emptiness, which is not true. You're taking all your stories of lack of self-worth, that you're not filled with love, and going into those stories and creating more stories.
Yeah, we do. We go into that delusion, and then we project. We project going back in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought many times in my life, how did I end up back here in the same place again?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's that cycle. We get to a place, and then all of a sudden we start going into the fear, and we start projecting the worst. What if? We do the what if game.
Uh-huh.
And then before we know it, we're right back there again in that same place. And I've thought this many times in my life. How do I break the cycle?
Mm-hmm.
How do I stop this insanity?
Right.
But we do that. We project, and we go into the old patterns over and over again. And that's why I'm so glad that these conversations, and the conversations that we will have eventually on Come to the Table, they are to help us, right? To help us break those patterns. And that's what this show is about, helping people see that you can break those old patterns with your relationships.
Yeah. And with the relationship with yourself, of not understanding that you are everything that you're seeking outside of yourself. It's within you. There's nothing outside of you. It is all in you. I used to watch this television series. I think it was called Being Erica. Anyway, it always opened up with this. It looked like a hallway with all these rooms off to the side, sort of like a hotel floor would look like. And I started thinking, this is what our mind's like. Now, I've heard this terminology before, is like, what room did you just walk in? But I was just looking at this hallway, and I'm like, oh yeah, some moments I walked in this room, I come out, I walk into another room. I'm walking into all these rooms of stories in my mind, and understanding that every single doorway is a story of another part of your life, and that we have the power to keep creating too. So either we're going to work on understanding these patterns and stories that we've been believing all our life, or we're going to start healing them. And what we're healing is the belief system, because there's nothing wrong with anybody. There is absolutely nothing wrong but what you believe about yourself. And so this is why I keep going back to God, because that has given me, having these constant, over and over and over again, discussions about these patterns, and them showing me how much I'm loved and how to love myself, to break the beliefs, to stop believing. And it doesn't mean that I still don't get triggered now and then, but oh my gosh, it's not nearly as much as I used to. over time, you just keep practicing, and presence helps you practice. So I would like everybody to, like, I don't know, maybe write down a couple of things of patterns that they keep seeing over and over again that come from an old story. And a lot of them are built on victim bully consciousness, like somebody's hurting me, somebody's holding me back. This is all the stuff too that people believe about being blocked, that you're not blocked from anything. Your ego tells you that you're blocked. What the block is the belief system that you believe that you're blocked. So you start believing that and you start creating other issues. So it would be good for people to write down a couple of things that they notice that are patterns that happen over and over again in their relationship. And if you can't think about it that way, maybe it could be that you can come from a place of, how do you feel? So how does this person make you feel when you're around them? Or this relationship or another relationship or something from the past. How do you end up feeling? And that's a great way for you to start tracing, oh, that's a familiar feeling. That's a familiar feeling from my childhood or my relationship with my parents or my siblings or somebody a teacher growing up in, going to school. So I think those are some really great ways to trace back. Where did this story start? When did I start believing these things about myself when none of them are true? And maybe do some journaling on it. Do some remembering to see where that delusion came from. Why you started to think that way about yourself. And how you're projecting it into your own relationships and looking for love outside of yourself.
That's a great point, Deb. Many times we wait until we're in crisis mode before we start to examine and see where that all came from. We wait until a relationship is disintegrating, and then we start looking at the patterns. So it's good at any point in a relationship to do that examination and to go in and really just figure it out. Just write down, where did I first notice this pattern? I like that idea. That's a great exercise that people can do.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to figure out, when did we start closing our heart? When did we stop feeling our own love? Like, you think about yourself, if you can remember, as a baby or a toddler, like, you're happy all the time. You have love. You just want to share it with everyone. And then as we go along, things happen and we start closing it and closing it and closing it as a protection. And when what you learn from God is you don't have to keep shutting it down, that you are protected always. You are safe always. But you have to be in this intimate relationship with love, with divine presence, for you to actually feel it. So knowing it, and lots of people can say, oh, I know God loves me, but do you have a relationship that you know that you are so secure and loved and who you are, so that you can go out in the world and keep expanding your heart and not being afraid to open it? And it is a process. It is our journey to do this. It doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, I still waffle back and forth too, but not as much as I used to. Imagine what your relationships would be like if you loved yourself and could feel your own love, the divine presence in you all the time. What will life be like?
Wow. we would be constantly in that wow time, right?
Yeah, yeah. It feels like joy. It feels bliss. It feels safe knowing you are loved and that you are eternal.
Yeah. And we're all looking for that, aren't we? We're
Yeah.
all wanting to return home to love.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, and that's one of the things that you and I and Ruth are working on. This is our mantra is return to love. We want everybody to return home with us, and home is love. Home is divine love. So you don't have to die to get it. It's waiting for you to be aware of its presence within you. And we want to do this collectively together, is to go home together and have that joy together to keep spreading out to the world, to help other people understand the light and love that they are, that lives within them, the oneness of everything. So yes, you are absolutely right. We're already home and we don't know it. The whole journey is about belief, because even though I know all the things that I've been taught, believing it and getting it entrenched so that your mind and heart are at sync is the whole journey of life, is believing that you are completely loved, you are eternal, you are perfection, and nothing else.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. Deb, we have a comment from one of our listeners, and
Okay.
this may be for a future show on this relationship series. But if I could just read the comment and see if you want to respond now or
Sure.
put it to a different show. It's from Kimberly. Kimberly
Okay.
follows us on Enlightened World, and we love you, Kimberly, so much. Thank you for being here. She says it's hard because I often feel secure until I get in a relationship, and then I lose myself. But based on all I've learned this past year, I look forward to my next chance to try better.
Yeah. Um, that is a fear of intimacy. I've been through it, and it's so common. I think I was talking about it before, that if you did not have parents or family that you could trust, meaning that you could be vulnerable, you can be yourself, and that they loved you unconditionally just for who you are, then it's really hard to go out and trust other people not to hurt you. Or that what happens if I do show myself? How is somebody going to react to me? And I have been through that when I allowed myself to be vulnerable with my husband. We've been together about 25 years. And over the years of learning and not be awake at the time, so I had no awareness. But I remember there were times, and it had to do with the crying thing. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. And then he would say, "Oh, look at you're weak, you're crying," and I would say, "Oh my God, so now I can't even cry." Not realizing he was just in his own delusion, and what he was saying to me had nothing to do with me. So the fear of intimacy has to be developed within yourself first. You have to trust yourself, and you can't trust yourself if you don't know who you are. You can't trust yourself if you don't know the truth of who you are. And this is why it's so important to have these conversations with God, because God will teach you who you are. God will teach you how to love. God will love you into loving yourself. And when you can start trusting yourself, that you keep yourself safe, other people don't. And it doesn't matter what other people think. Then you can start being yourself. The other part that she was talking about, Kim, and it's a great question, Kim, because lots of us have done it, is losing yourself in your partner so that you cannot, and that's kind of like the romantic junk in the movies, you know, like you blend into one and, you know, and it's supposed to look like this, but it's also about losing knowing who you are. And the other person becomes so important that your life revolves all around them. It's kind of how what we do sometimes with our kids, right? Our kids become our life. So it is about learning how to have a what is the word I want to use? It's being connected, but it's being connected as a whole person going into a relationship with another whole person. And this takes you really understanding who you are and feeling safe with who you are and being able to be independent and also being interdependent when you need to be, meaning that you rely on each other for things as a couple, but you don't lose you don't lose who you are. Lots of moms go through that when they have a baby or they start child rearing and they become mom, and then they forget that, oh, there's a person inside here and I don't know what happened to that person because I've been so busy caretaking and loving on my child and being so concerned about their well-being and my parenting that I have lost connection with my own self.
That is so true, Deb. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this conversation. And Kimberly does say thank you. And I just love that we are starting to get an interaction from our audience, and that is our goal here with this show, is to have any of you that want to bring up whatever your question is. We can address that on this show. So please continue to do that. Deb, this has been amazing today, and the time has absolutely flown by. But I feel like what has come forward from this show today is so important to really look at breaking old patterns, look at being triggered, um, look at how we can develop that divine relationship to improve every relationship in our life. And you've stressed that many times, but I think it really came out today, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It is my joy and my pleasure to have these discussions with you and pass on the wisdom and the growth that has come through me, and hopefully help you understand your life a little bit better.
Awesome. Awesome. Deb is on every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. And we hope that you will join in for Divine Relationship Recovery as we continue the discussion every week. I will be on some of the time, and Dr. Ruth Anderson will be here the other times, and she will be with Deb next week. And Deb, I know you're going to bring us more of this divine energy and divine revelation that has happened in your life. Deb is also a wonderful author. Go check her out on Amazon.com. And Deb, do you want to share the names of your books?
Sure. They're a book series called A Divinely Ordered Life, and they've been dictated by Jesus and God, and the angels too. I have my journal entries in them of these type of discussions. So they're fun to read, and to show you how informal the discussion is between you and God, that it's just pure love. There's no formality, and God knows every single thing about you because God is you. And so there's nothing you can hide. It's all out in the open, and it's you can be as vulnerable as you need to, because he already knows.
Absolutely. Deb, how can people contact you if they want to get more information or more teaching or just be in your beautiful presence like I want to be? So how can they find you?
You can go to debbiengoldberg.com is my website. I'm on Facebook or Debbie N. Goldberg, and you can messenger me too if you want to on Facebook, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Deb, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to that voice and really following through with what you know is your mission, with what you know you're supposed to bring forth to us. I really appreciate you. Enlightened World appreciates you, and I know all of our listeners do. Thank you so much, my dear friend, and blessings sent your way.
Oh, thanks. God bless everyone and you.
Good night, everyone. Deb will be back next week, and we'll be back on Sunday together at 10 o'clock in the morning for our silent meditation. Join us then. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.